What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, and welcome back to yet another panel show with me and Sim, obviously. And you've got returning guests to the panel. We've got Brian Daigle, the long time we haven't seen you on a panel. How are we doing, Brian?
I'm doing okay, mate. We're getting there. We're getting there. Always a pleasure to be with you two and Ashmatic and everyone in the chat. Hope you're all good.
And Ashmatic as well. Hasn't been on in a couple of weeks. Good to have you here, my man.
Yes, my brother. It's good to see you guys again. Thanks for having me on. Big yourself. So big up, Brian. It's been a minute. We need to link up once again, my broski. And big up to the chat once again and people watching at home. And also, you guys are on audio as well, right?
All audio platforms, exactly.
Jeez, a little bit different. But yeah, man, big up to everyone listening in as well.
Yeah, I'm hearing Spurs Kings as well as making waves in the scene these days.
Boy, we try, man. We move, man. Don't talk too much.
We've got quite a bit to talk about. Obviously, an unbelievable win on the weekend, 4-0 at Villa Park. We'll start off with you, Brian. Do you think that was our best performance of the season?
You know what, mate? I've looked at it in loads of different ways. I look at it, the game you and me went to with Burnley, that away game, was brilliant for me for so many reasons. The football, the way the fans were that day, taken to hands so quickly, that was brilliant. Then you look at Arsenal away, that was a tremendous performance. You look at Newcastle, Manchester City away. But then I look at it, when I think about it now with that Villa game, how big that game was for them being in fourth, and it could have been 8 points and bringing it back down, thankfully, to 2, getting a clean sheet and literally putting in a performance when it was needed, when we really need to start grinding out results with April coming up and that clusterfuck of fixtures. I think you look at all the added elements to it, and I think it has to be definitely the second half. The second half, I think, was the best 45 minutes we've put on this season without a doubt. But with terms with getting a clean sheet, 4 different goal scorers, Van der Ven picking up his injury, there's so many different elements. I'm going, yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of agree with you, especially what the game meant. But Ashmatic, I mean, I thought in the first half you could really see where those openings were going to come. And, you know, we were getting the final pass wrong every time. We were, you know, bad mistakes out the back from Romero, and Bissouma was putting us under all sorts of pressure. But that second half was something to behold, wasn't it?
100%, man. I think you're spot on about the first half. I thought that we had a lot of the possession. Do you know what I mean? And that wasn't by mistake. We pinned them in. We played our style of football. I know, like, they went to a back 5 and they were going to try and hit us on the counter. But in terms of, like, their fullbacks, wingbacks, whatever you want to call it, they were nullified. They were out of the game. They had to go direct because of the way we stifled them. And as you said before, it was just the final pass that was going slightly off. Your doggy, the way he started, he was amazing. Johnson, to be fair to him, he was doing his thing, taking his man on, and that's what we wanted to see as fans. And I just thought, like, yeah, if we just get that final pass right, or that decision making in that final third, if we can be clinical, then we can cause them problems. And so for me, I just thought, yeah, that game has to be one of our best games up there because of what it meant and the expectation of the Villa fans. Obviously, John McGinn came out and said this has to be one of, if not the biggest games of Aston Villa's recent history. Like, in this, so for me, that just sets the tone for the game. And the back of our performances before that, a lot of our fans had a lot of doubts. You know, they were giving Villa a lot of respect, but weren't showing us the same amount of respect. You know, as a team, as a club, as someone that could cause them problems. I looked at the last game that we played, and I was arguing we played some of our best football against Villa. And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it was 20 minutes, it was half an hour." But I thought even when Bentancur came off, when Højbjerg stepped on, I know, like, Højbjerg's not a fan favorite, but even when he was on the side and we were playing against Villa, we caused them a lot of trouble in that second half. So I had all the confidence coming into this game. This game, difference was we had a set 11, you know, the 11 that was getting to the top of the league. And I just thought, yeah, we just put those chances away. We punished them, and we made the right decisions in the end. And the spaces started opening up, and we just took our opportunities. So that's what it was for me. And yeah, I think it was one of our best games, if I'm being honest.
Before we carry on, some people in the chat are saying Brian and Ash's volume is a bit low. I don't know if you can do anything, guys, to sit closer to your mics or something. I don't know to
do that.
boost
1,
it.
2. Yo, check.
That's better. That's better.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys. But Sib, how do you feel? Was it just a question of, Spurs? It was always inevitable that once we got these players back in a fluid system that we were going to perform like that? I would like to say so, just because that's what we've seen from the first 10 games. And once we got that first 11, we saw what they were capable of. But obviously, we have had a lot of the players back in from injury, since about February time. And we still haven't seen that same kind of caliber of performance that we used to in the earlier parts of the season. So there's always kind of like a waiting game. When's it going to happen? Every game, everyone was saying it's going to happen this game, it's going to happen this game, it's going to happen this game, and never quite clicked. But hopefully, Palace game was decent, but this was the first time we probably saw the level of performance that we saw in the early parts. Maybe even better, because how we took Villa to the sword later in the game when they were down to 10 men was really impressive. And I thought the football we played to get into the ascendancy was some of the best football we have played under Ange Postecoglou. And the fact that we did that against a Villa side, battling with us for top 4 in a big game for them, as John McGinn said, from a league perspective, it's one of their biggest games in recent history. So the fact that we kind of went away to Villa Park and laid down the gauntlet that we did in the approach play, I think we really showed Villa up in a way, I felt, because I think Unai Emery went into this game with a tactical plan, maybe a bit of a pragmatic kind of plan. I think maybe he looked at how Brentford and Wolves had played against us, and to a certain extent Palace as well, with that back three, and how they made it difficult for us to kind of break them down. And I thought Villa maybe had the mentality of, if we can kind of play that back three, make it very difficult for Spurs to play through us, we know that Spurs give up chances, and we know that Spurs are kind of vulnerable at the back, and they probably came in with that mentality thinking, let's play on the counter in this game, and if we come away with a draw, and or if we can kind of sneak a few chances on the counter, we're going to be better off for it. But I think we kind of showed them up a bit. We showed them that the way we play is going to be more effective for controlling the game, more effective for creating the chances and taking it to the opposition. And I think we showed that. And I think it was a marvellous display of possession football and attacking football. And I was just delighted that all our attacking players showed up in this game and really took it to Villa, because they really had no answer to it. Yeah, and that for me was unbelievable to see. You look at Brennan Johnson, who's had a lot of critics over the last, ever since joining Tottenham. He put in his best display in a Spurs shirt. Dejan Kulusevski, as much as however frustrating he was in the first half, I felt he put his best display in a long time on that right wing in a Spurs shirt as well. Sonny in the number 9 just continues to deliver as well, week in, week out. And you got players as well who have been on the periphery, like Radu Dragusin, who came in for Mickey van der Ven at 0-0 and put in a performance like he put for the first time that we could see him over a long stretch. I think all these things were such a wonder to see. But Brian, do you think there was a case of Unai Emery just overthinking things in the way he set Villa up? Because you look at his performance against Man City, front foot football, they absolutely squeezed them on the pitch. They suffocated them that day from minute 1 all the way till the end of the game. They beat Arsenal at Villa Park as well. And he just kind of changed his system to try and stop Spurs instead of trying to hurt Spurs.
So I've got a few Aston Villa fans back home, and also a few Spurs fans at the Scotland Yard. Brought a few friends that were Aston Villa fans to the Scotland Yard on Sunday. And when we're speaking straight after the game, obviously you'd expect to hear we're playing in Europe, we're tired, we've had a couple of it, all the things that would happen. Obviously you played a game on Thursday, unlike us. But the very first thing they said is we have no idea why Emery's changed he changed his tactics. He's changed his tactics to try and nullify us rather than go for us. I thought this game really was going to be, and I'm sure a lot of people did, thought this game was going to be end-to-end, back and forth, 2 attacking teams, just literally going at it, hammer and tong, winner takes all. And he changed it. He did change it. Whether that had been because of Europe, whether that had been because of injuries, or he thought, right, I've got to try and nullify Spurs, he definitely did change it. And Villa fans were saying this. And then you look again at Match of the Day, and even Match of the Day 2, it even highlighted, I think it was Danny Murphy, wasn't it? I think, if my memory serves me correctly, that did the in-depth analysis, kind of like Ash does with his great tactic analysis. And they certainly changed things. I really didn't expect that from Aston Villa, but they certainly made a change to try and nullify us, and it backfired on them, thank God.
Do you think it was nerves from Emre going into a big game, Ashmatic, in terms of just trying to avoid defeat? You saw what John McGinn said, you alluded to that before, and also what he did in the game, absolutely taken out a doggy, straight red card, and very much warranted. Do you think there was a lot of nerves in there from the Villa fans and for the team as well? Because Villa fans, you didn't hear a peep out of them all day.
Yeah, I think it was a case of Emre, he just... The tinker man, like when fans criticize Ange for not switching it up, not changing it, not adapting it, and being too gun-ho, etc., he's actually tried to adapt and change it. He's looked at what Wolves have done, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to copy and paste that. Like, they look so vulnerable from that counter-attack that what I'll do is I'll stink it out, and I'll just go like long into Ollie Watkins, or I'll try to get into feet really quickly to Bailey. And at first, in the first half, they had quite a few big openings, in my opinion. I thought they had some of the more fretful chances in that first half. So it was working. It was actually working. But in terms of being clinical and decision-making, I don't know what it was. Ollie Watkins had a chance and he could have like taken it on himself, and he decides to kind of hold on to the ball and pass it. So sometimes it's a mixture of tactics not going right on the day, and sometimes it comes down to the players not executing the tactics that you set out for them. So it's a bit of a mixture, and I think it clearly got to the players, because we all saw what happened with Mr. John at the end when he kind of lost his head, bruv. He got rattled. And the funny thing is, when he did do the foul on Udogie, because Udogie was just beating man for days, like just for fun, one of the players came up to John McGinn, and he did this because people were like arguing. Watkins was like, oh, I think it was a bit harsh, blah blah blah. But one of the players came up to him and pointed, like saying, mentality, come on.
I think it was Konsa.
Konsa, yeah. He's come up to him and he said, brother, what are you're moving mad. What's going on here? Like, you said it was the biggest game. You're meant to be our captain. Now you're going to be missing for 3 games, and that's going to have a massive impact on our top 4 challenge. Do you know what I mean? And I'm sure we're going to get to that in a bit. But it's those type of things that I think the occasion kind of got to the players and Emery as well. So it was a mixture of the two, I felt, which was ultimately Aston Villa's downfall. Also, not having their midfielder, Kamara, defensive midfielder, I thought he was a massive miss. Do you know what I mean? In terms of winning that midfield battle. And I think that's the reason why we were able to dominate in those areas from the opening half as well, in my opinion. So, I going into that game as well, that gave me massive confidence as well. On top of that, thinking, they haven't got that player, because at the same time, as much as they can be gun-ho, and I think he was probably aware of that, we're going to be exposed going on the way back, because Spurs are dangerous on that counter-attack. So he didn't want to play into our strengths, because imagine he went gun-ho, that's even more space for Johnson, even more space for Kulu and Son. Or, if we started Werner, he probably thinking we might start Werner. He's thinking, I can't give Werner all that space, even though he might not be clinical. It's just asking for trouble. So, like, what he did make sense, but it just kind of backfired in the end, because we managed to get those chances and we were more clinical on the day.
Sim, I mean, we were speaking in the build-up to this game, talking about this is the first time Villa have been in these kind of games for a very long time. Spurs have kind of been there, done it over the last 10 years, a multiple amount of times. Do you think the way that Villa lost their heads with that McGinn chance and maybe the overthinking by Unai Emery was kind of evidence of that?
Well, I think when it comes to Unai, this is kind of the story of his career, isn't it? I mean, obviously we don't know how the next 10 games are going to play out, but historically, Unai Emery has got into this position a few times with a few different clubs, including Arsenal. and has been in Europe, and more often than not, the Europe becomes a large distraction for the Premier League or the league campaign, and the league campaign does tend to suffer for one reason or another. And I think Jamie Carragher was talking about it on Monday Night Football, how Unai Emery is a kind of very tactical manager in the sense that he will kind of change his tactics a lot for the situation. And a lot of the time, yes, that can be a good thing because it sometimes leads to you winning tactical battles in certain games and certain one-off games. But when it comes to a league campaign where you have to show consistency, sometimes that can lead to a lot of confusion in the setup between the players. And all of a sudden, things that become second nature to the players, like patterns of play and the way you set up and play football, all of a sudden that can become a bit muddled. And some of the players can be not sure what they're supposed to be doing in any given situation, whereas Ange has a certain philosophy and a certain way of playing, which he isn't going to change for whoever the opposition is. And that kind of philosophy comes a lot more ingrained in how we're going to play rather than how Villa and Unai Emery are going to play. Not to say Unai Emery is a bad manager, or that counts against him, because obviously he's been very successful in Europe and won many, many European trophies. But when it comes to his league campaign, it does often suffer for it. And I think we've seen that many, many times in his career. So maybe the inexperience as well, if from Villa's point of view, in terms of being in a top four race and knowing what it takes to get there, might have played into that occasion. Maybe they kind of froze on the occasion as well, whereas Tottenham grew from it. But you got to remember, Tottenham are a very young team, and a lot of these players, it's going to be new to a lot of these players as well in terms of being in these kind of pressure situations in a top four race. So I don't know if it's maybe the club mentality. Tottenham are more comfortable in these kind of situations than Aston Villa, but I would say when it comes to the manager's mentality, I definitely think that had a big part to play in this kind of result and that kind of performance. It'll be interesting to see how Villa recover from this, whether they learn from it and kind of go again, or is it the start of them starting to fall apart and falling away in this top four race? It'll be interesting to see.
It's a strange one, isn't it? Because I agree with you. I mean, history tells us that he always prioritizes the cup competitions, the European competitions before the league. But actually, this time around, he rested players out in Amsterdam for this game this weekend, and it's kind of backfired, hasn't it, now, with them losing 4-0. Yeah, they're still in that tie in Europe with only drawing 0-0 in Amsterdam, which you'd probably say is a good result on the face of things. But I did feel Unai Emery kind of approached it in a different way, which he usually does.
I would say, yes, he rested players, but obviously I think 6 of the players who played on Sunday still played on Thursday. Not to say he's going to rest everyone. Obviously, if you think the European game is important, you're going to have to play some important players if you're going to try and get a result. So I think maybe the balancing of both games, it was just very, very difficult. And especially Villa at their best are a very intense team, and they just seem to be very leggy, especially in that second half. They seem to lose that intensity. And whether it's Unai Emery's fault or not, they did seem to suffer from having that extra game. I think that's definitely fair to say. Whether he changed players or not, I think having that extra game definitely made them suffer. So I think you're right. I think he could have played a stronger team on Thursday, and he didn't. But I still think they suffered for it, whether it be just because of the travel time or wherever it was. I think they struggled to balance both games with the team they had out, and Tottenham took full advantage of it. They seemed fresher on the day. I think they were able to keep up their running and their pressing game into that second half. I think Ange alluded to it. He said at the end of the first half, he saw Villa was starting to tire and look a bit leggy, and he told the team at half time there wasn't any big changes from his point of view. He said the way we're going to win this game is from perseverance. Keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to wear we're going to wear Villa down. And that's exactly what happened. And you could see in that second half, the mistakes they started to make in their back line was evidence of that. They started to maybe not just get tired physically, but I think mentally they started to get a bit tired as well of how they were approaching a game. And Tottenham were absolutely brilliant. You still have to be on top of your game and be very, very good to take full advantage of it. And all 4 goals we scored were top notch. And it wasn't as if we had to create loads of chances. We didn't. I think we had 5 shots on target on the day, but we were just super clinical with our finishing. And that just also goes to point to the quality we have in the front line.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
What you've got to also add to this very, very quickly is with Aston Villa, it's a double whammy for them, because losing John McGinn for 3 games is huge. He is such a key player, and for me, he's a very underrated player. But
Agreed.
He is key to a lot they do. A lot of what Villa do in midfield It's like when you give a penalty away and your defender gets a red card, or you keep it, the double whammy. Losing that, it get a humbling from Spurs, and to lose one of your key players for 3 games. It's been a great day for Spurs, hasn't it?
It really has.